Today is 10th of October, market trade reversal bar on lower volume, down 10.3585. Now mentioned in previous videos, this has been a strong rally and it tests the prior high made in 2018 and mentioned that it is not likely to break on first attempt. So we're likely to see pullback, and this is what we have been experiencing right now. Now the recent price action doesn't inspire confidence. The fact that they are actually hovering below at the lower end of this wide range reversal bar, and over the last few days itself we do see range expansion on the downside. The only consolation is that today reversal bar is accompanied with low volume. Now this pivot level here is an important level to watch. This is at 3559. Breaking this pivot low itself will complete the double top formations, and it may likely test the next support, which is over here at 3500. So it's important to watch, particularly the big cap stocks. Let's turn our attentions to the S&P 500s. Managed to actually make all-time high. Now this is actually a 3-day bar. We still got 2 days to go, but by and large you notice actually we really do not see a very significant range expansion like this. So it may pull back and then test this resistance, which now provides support. If you take a look at daily charts, you can see that after a series of small range bar, it managed to take out again, unless there's significant increase in volume and increase in range, otherwise it may actually pull back further. We see similar patterns in Nasdaq. It's just that actually Nasdaq has not made all-time high. So you notice it's quite similar in terms of the shapes of the patterns. Managed to actually move up again, a series of narrow range bar on the weekly charts. This is an obvious overhead resistance. Again, we'd like to see whether there's range expansion, and attempt to actually test this resistance here at about 18671. Now let's take a look at the Hang Seng Index, because there's a lot of action recently. After announcements of the Chinese stimulus measure by the Chinese government, we see very strong move, but this is a bit too much too soon, and we see a very deep retracement. Now usually after a deep retracement, we do see a couple of swing. So market is likely to be very volatile and choppy, and it may actually trade sideways for some times to digest the recent move. This is 10-year treasury yield. If you notice that each 10-year treasury yield has been actually trading with a downward bias, and this is what happens recently. It managed to take out this downward trend line quite convincingly and moved up, and obviously this downward trend lines will offer immediate resistance. So this is as a result of the strong non-farm payroll figure, and this may discourage the Federal Reserve from cutting interest rate, or maybe the quantums of the cuts may be reduced, and in anticipation of that, you see the strengthening of the yield. Alright, and that also affects the industry. Alright, stocks that is actually heavy capital intensive is likely to actually react negatively. So again, this is a resistance level to watch, and testing this itself, we may see maybe downward move from there. This is Brent crude. Again, it was actually trading with a bearish bias. I mentioned before 70-71 important support level. It managed to bounce off. In the process itself, we actually take out the downward trend line. This is perhaps as a result of the geopolitical tensions, especially if Iran is involved in the war, and Iran is one of the major oil producer. Now at this level itself, this is a very significant resistance as a pullback, and this is actually a classic actions. Now after breaking a downward trend lines, very often we see a retracement to test this trend line, and this is quite a convenient levels to actually initiate a downward move. So again, with this the rejection of the low, we may see a bounce from here, but whatever the case may be, it is really very much dependent on a couple of things. One is geopolitical, and the other thing is the climate conditions. So we have been experiencing a lot of storms, and many actually affecting the oil rig in this area. Let's take a look at our local markets, some of the stock we'll be discussing. Now this is yen logs we discussed in previous videos and also some previous posting. Very strong move. If you take a close look over here, this move up, it was a small deeper setup. You notice it break quite convincingly with high volume, and it actually run up without hardly any pullback, and we see a extension bar on the downside. The last two bars, it trades small border. This is a temporary halt. It may bounce here, but the potential of a downward move is still very high. So this is some things we can actually leave aside because it will take some time to normalize. So most of the Chinese stock has exhibit similar behavior. For example, China Sunsing, same thing, strong move, perhaps less dramatic and pullback. So far the pullback is on low volume, which is generally nicer compared to yen log. So we can actually take a look at this resistance level, and this is tested quite often. So this is more significant. That's at 49 cents. Sun Power, similarly, very strong move and sharp retracements. Again, it may just trade sideways, and we like to wait for it to complete this consolidation and look for the break on the outside. China Aviation Oil, less dramatic, but nevertheless you can see the move, but equally strong reaction on the downside, particularly this reversal bar. Consolidation, last two bars volume is actually low, so the selling is a bit dry up. So again, we may see a bounce from here. At this point in time, it's actually a small deeper, but it's quite distant away. High here is at 97 cents. Let's take a look at the Kaplan China Trust. It has also benefited from the recent stimulus measure. Again, if you notice the extension bar after a slight upward move, it actually have deep retracement. Likely to see a bounce again, and just patiently wait for it to complete its consolidations. Wilmer has a lot of exposure to Chinese markets, so we did see some actions, but we would like to actually observe what happens because it has been quite volatile. If it can stabilize, that will be generally good. Hong Kong Land is slightly muted in its upward move. If you notice over here, we see a rejection of the high, so this is a sign of weakness, and you notice the high volume. We expect pullback, and this is what happened. This is a small deeper setup. Bar high here is at 428. Singtel was one of the strong stock, but you have succumbed selling much earlier. If you take a look. So at this point in time, we probably have to leave this stock alone for the very basic reason it's actually trading below 1326 SMA, and we generally do not like that. This is negative daylights. Alright, so it may well just roll down. This is something possible, especially this is a very obvious support level, and it's actually tested recently. So if this level cannot hold, we may see it turn downwards, and 1326 may slope down. So that will be negative. So you'll see also weakness in the three bank stocks. This is DBS. Perhaps slightly stronger than the other two bank stocks. After a deep retracement, there's a bounce. But again, this bounce doesn't really inspire confidence because you notice the rejection of the high, and you're trading either neutral bar or bear bodies. Alright, so 13 is actually flat, so it doesn't have this. 13 and 26 is actually converging. It shows that it's actually losing momentum. So again, it's not tradable at this moment. UOB, very obvious. After a run up near the resistance, you actually fail, and you actually break the 1326 SMA. And these two bars are very obvious sign of weakness, and there is obvious resistance at this level. So again, we like to observe, especially if we break this, we may perhaps take the opportunity to initiate a short. OCBC, again much bigger than DBS. You can see actually the retracement itself bring it down below the 26 SMA, followed by a bounce. Again, we like to actually observe what happens. If we break on the downside, we may actually initiate setup to initiate short. XJX, mentioned previously that after this get up, this is a terminal phase, exhaustion move, and it actually pulled back, very deep pullback, and it just trade sideways. And there was an attempt again, and it kind of unable to actually close well, and we see sideways move. Now this is really a part of our consolidations. I'd like to see take out convincingly 1180. Now for clarity, take a look at the weekly chart. This is what happened. If you take a look at the closing itself, you'll be making successive high, except for this week itself. Okay, and obviously the daylight is huge. If we trade sideways, close out of daylight, that will provide us a better odds on this break on the upside. Semcorp, it is start experiencing fatigue. Mentioned previously that this is a very obvious overhead resistance, and this is what happened. This is extremely strong move, and there was a attempt again, and what happened was that it could not actually hold well, and it's actually trading sideways. Again, very much depending on what happened over the next 1-2 weeks or so. If we hover at this level on lower volume, that is healthy. Otherwise, it may reverse and move down. The concern is that if the broad markets experience weakness, then the stock is more likely to actually move down. We already have seen some stocks actually exhibiting that behavior. For example, Keppel Corp. So quite clear, Keppel Corp tests this resistance. This resistance is very obvious, and it actually moved downwards. And the last 3 bar itself, we do see wide range reversal bar. Consolation today is the volume is actually low. A slightly better bet will be Citron. Citron is a stock we do not discuss very often. Basic reason is because it's extremely weak. But what happened was that it managed to actually clear the 200 days. So this is the 200 days SMA. We managed to take it out quite convincingly with a huge bar here. And now experiencing pullback, which is expected, which is normal. At this point in time, it's a small deeper setup. Bar high here is 215.